According to the 2024 point-in-time count, more than 31,000 people are experiencing homelessness across Washington. How will you address the crisis? How do you plan to pay for it? Would you raise taxes? Mr. Reichert, you first, please.
Well, first of all, this homeless crisis has also gotten worse under the lack of leadership of Mr. Ferguson's 12 years as Attorney General. The homeless crisis is really a drug and substance abuse crisis. It's also a mental illness crisis. Mr. Ferguson supported the legislation that legalized drugs on the streets of our cities across this state. He legalized drugs such as fentanyl, which is a poison, and people are dying from fentanyl. We are handing out kits called survival kits. The taxpayers are paying for these survival kits that contain a needle, a syringe, some aluminum foil, a pipe, and some Narcan. That's a survival kit. We're not helping the people on the street. And I would pay for this, helping the homeless through the $1 billion that we somehow misplaced during the COVID monies. My time is up.
Thank you. Mr. Ferguson, please.
A point of agreement. We agree that the issue of homelessness is complex. Mental health, chemical dependency, and affordability all play a key role in addressing this crisis. The difference here is we have very different ideas about how to address it. My opponent has said repeatedly that we should send the unhoused, the homeless, to McNeil Island as a solution, or to Evergreen State University, by the way, because he thinks it's closing for some reason. You've said those things over and over again. Those are not serious proposals to a serious situation. In contrast, we, in my office, as Attorney General, have taken on some of the most powerful corporations in the world who have fueled the opioid epidemic by not playing by the rules. What have we done by bringing those cases? Recovered more than $1 billion, and yes, that's with the B, $1 billion. And I've insisted in those agreements the money can only be used by the state and by local governments to invest in treatment and first responders, and they can only use those dollars to address the opioid epidemic. So there's a clear contrast in this race with someone who's getting the resources, getting money for treatment, getting money for first responders. I'm proud to be endorsed by the state firefighters who are on the front lines of dealing with these issues. And there's a clear contrast with my opponent who wants to send these individuals to McNeil Island where we keep our sexually violent predators.
I'm going to follow up with another question about housing in our state. It is the most, one of the most,
I don't get a chance.
You can spend 45 seconds on the rebuttal.
Okay.
But let me just get this question. You can use that time as you choose.
Thank you.
Our state is one of the most expensive places to live in the country. As you both know, rents have soared. According to the Housing Affordability Index in May of this year, a median income household can afford to buy a median priced home in only 3 of Washington's 39 counties. What do you propose to do as governor to create the desperately needed more affordable housing? Mr. Reichert.
Okay, so housing, there are so many things that interconnect with the cost, not just housing, but the cost of everything that we buy. And you've got to go back to crime. Crime ties into people who are living on the streets. So now we're talking about homelessness. Crime and homelessness, people living on the street, using drugs, sleeping, falling asleep, and or totally wasted, living in the doorways of our businesses. The businesses close, we lose jobs, the economy starts to suffer. The other issue here is taxes and regulation. So taxes, let's just talk about the gas tax, for example. That adds a cost to everything that we buy in this state, not just gas, but food, clothing, and everything else that we buy in Washington State.
And do feel free to finish your sentence before you do move on. But okay. Mr. Ferguson, same
Thank you. I appreciate this question because I've been to all 39 counties, and in listening to folks in all 39 counties, the issue I hear most frequently is this specific issue, affordable housing. And there's much that we can do as a state. As a state, we need to construct 1 million units of affordable housing of all kinds in the next 20 years. In my voters pamphlet statement, I put in black and white, in my first term as governor, we're going to construct 200,000 units of new housing. How are we going to do that? public-private partnerships. When I meet with business executives, they talk about the need for housing. They're ready to invest. When I met with a small business owner in Central Washington who runs a restaurant, he's had to scale back the hours of his restaurant because workers in that local community cannot afford housing. There's bipartisan solutions. We can come together as a state to address a real crisis.